Hello friends, my name is Sagar Shah and I am a rated player from India. My rating is 2359 and I played a very interesting game in Bulgaria which I would like to share with you. The main reason why I am sharing this game with you is because it has got some accurate calculations, not very deep calculations but accurate calculations, which I would like to ask you to solve them as the game progresses. So my advice to you would be to set up a board next to you and play it on the board as I say, and when I ask you certain questions to just pause this video and to have a think on the board and try to find the answers. Okay, so let's start off the game. I played knight f3, c5, c4, g6, d4, cd4, knight d4, bg7. Now over here, if you are aiming for an advantage with white, I think there is only one move that is accurate, and that's my first question. What do you think is the best move for white here? Yes, for those who are familiar with this position, will definitely play e4 because this is the right way to meet this opening with from black side. If you play a move like knight c3, which looks pretty normal, black has a good move in knight c6, asking what the white knight is going to do on d4, because exchange like this would definitely be fine for black. He is more than equal here. And if you play a move like e3, it's pretty passive because after knight f6, bishop e2, castle, castle, I think black has already equalized with the move d5. So the last option, which I think is the most ambitious from white side, is to play knight to c2, and black can play a very surprising move here, that is bishop into c3, giving up his powerful bishop, and after b takes c3, knight f6, play his queen to a5, d6, bishop e6, and he gets excellent counterplay against these weak pawns. It's a complicated game, but I think black is not worse. Hence, I would like to meet black's knight to c6 with bishop to e3, and hence my move is logical e4. Black continued with knight f6. Of course, he has a very small trap over here, that is with if I play e5 to win a pawn with queen a5. Okay, but I won't fall for such a trap. I played knight c3, castles, bishop e2, d6, bishop e3, and knight c6. I played queen to d2, bishop d7, f3. So till now it's a pretty normal position that we are going into, and black has, I think, one major continuation here which seems to me to be the correct one, that is to take on d4, bishop d4, and play bishop c6. Now why does black take on d4? The answer to that lies, I will let you know after my opponent's next move. He didn't take on d4, he played queen a5. Now my question to you is, what should white play here? Please have a pause and think over it. Yes, over here I think the best move for white, and is what I played, is knight b3. I like this move because if you see logically, white has big space advantage in this position, mainly because of his e4 and c4 pawns. Black, on the other hand, has a compact pawn structure, but you can say that he is a little bit cramped, and that's why it made sense for my opponent to take on d4 and reduce the crampness of his pieces when he exchanges one minor piece. So after bishop d4, bishop c6, he can continue with knight d7, maybe a5, knight c5. It's a normal accelerated dragon kind of a position. As things were, my opponent played queen a5, which is a mistake, and if you have more space, you should try to keep more pieces on the board, and that's why knight b3 I think is a good move. Now my opponent has to choose from a lot of bad options. Queen h5 I think is a horrible move. Yes, queen is really lost for squares now, and I think white will win some material after a good move h4, and g4 is coming up next. Black is really in deep trouble. I think the logical move here can be queen b4, though the queen looks really dangerously posted, and it seems like it's going to be trapped any moment. Black can maintain his queen in this position if he plays very accurately. Of course, if I can, then I can push him back. I can trap the queen with a3, but okay, suppose I play queen c2, black can reply with knight a5, and he is still fighting in the game. So maybe queen b4 was a possibility, but my opponent went back here, queen to c7, which was a very bad move, I think, because it allows me to play knight d5, a strong move. The point being that knight takes, c takes, knight e5 is met with rook c1. Let's say queen b8, castles, rook c8, take on c8, queen c8, rook c1, and after queen d8, a normal move like knight a5, and you can see that these two bishops are superbly powerful with the rook on the open file. These two pawns are really weak over here, and I think black is busted. White is close to winning this position. So knight d5 cannot be taken, and hence my opponent went back queen b8. Over here I could have just castled and have a great position, but I decided to put on more pressure on him and put my bishop on g5. Now the point over here is that I am not exactly threatening to take on f6, but I'm keeping the pressure. I'm telling black that I can take on f6 whenever I want to, and hence you have to be quite ready for that. So my opponent over here played rook e8, a smart move. His idea is that suppose if I take on f6, he will not take with the bishop, play ef6, and later on if he can get in f5, even though I have a strong knight on d5, he will play around the knight and gain a good position. This is definitely what I didn't want, and hence I just castled now. I don't want to give him any counterplay. If you look at this position and try to find a good move for black, you will realize that it's not an easy task. So I don't blame my opponent for his next move, by which he played a5 and weakened the squares b6 and b5. I request you to pause the video here and try to analyze the consequences of the move knight b6 here. It looks like the most obvious move, and I think it's the move which seems to win material in this position. But black has some tricky defenses, and I want you to take as much time as you can to figure out all the intricacies. So have a pause and think. This is the critical position of the game. Okay, I hope you had a good think. In the game I played knight b6. Now of course here black has two moves. One is rook a6, which is not so good, and the other is, which my opponent played in the game, queen a7. Now if you play rook a6, then I think all of you must have come to the right conclusion that after c5, white attacks the rook on a6, and he is already having an advantage because he threatens bishop f6 followed by knight d7. So the right move here, and I think the only move, was queen a7. If you now play a move like, let's say, c5, I don't think it's such a good move, because black just moves his bishop to e6, and white is now threatening nothing. If he takes the, or maybe bishop e6, better is just to play rook a d8. And what to do is, this pin is quite strong and black is fine in this position. So the right move, which I am sure you must have considered, is bishop e3. The threat now is to simply take on d7, and if he moves the bishop on d7, I take on a8. So I'm just an exchange up for no compensation. Here, if you found black's best defense, which my opponent did find in the game, I would give you a really big congratulations to see it. That is bishop h6. It's a very tricky move, and the point is that you must continue your calculation over here. So after bishop into h6, I think black will just take queen b6, and after bishop e3, I don't deny that white has an advantage here. He does have an advantage, but black has retained material equilibrium, and well, it's just what can I say, it's just a small advantage for white. Hence over here, after bishop h6, it is important to check what happens to f4, and definitely the right move now is for black to, for white, if you are calculating, is to consider knight into e4. Where can the queen go? The queen has to stay in touch with the bishop on e3 if white wants to threaten to take a piece, and therefore there are only two logical moves now. One is queen to d3, and the other one is queen to c1. Now queen to d3, if you play, I think black will play bishop f5. White has to take now on a8, queen a8, and if you play, this was my main calculation in the game, g4, I was pretty happy until I noticed knight to c5, good move. The point is, this knight can be taken in two ways. This bishop can be taken on f5, but both of them attack the black queen, the white queen, and hence white has to retreat, let's say something like queen d2, and black can just save his bishop to d7, and black has a playable position. Therefore over here, or maybe just, yeah, he has a decent chance in the position. Therefore the right move here is to play queen c1, and as you have figured it out that now the threat is knight into d7, so black has to move his bishop on d7 to somewhere. He has no time to save his rook on a8. So there are two possibilities mainly, bishop e6 and bishop f5. And if you considered bishop f5 and you found a refutation to it, I would be really congratulating you once again, because after a move like g4, black has to play bishop e6, only move, and now after knight a8, queen a8, good move is f5, bishop has to take, queen takes, and after gf5, the e4 knight, is hanging and white will emerge a rook up. So therefore the right move over here is bishop e6, and after knight a8, queen a8. This is the position till where I think you should have tried to calculate, because everything was pretty much forced till here, and I'm sure that if you could calculate up till here, you are really good in calculation. And I think it was a good training exercise. Now we come to the next most important question in this game, is what should white play here? I would ask you to take a break, to pause the video and try to answer this question as to what exactly should white do now. Okay, I hope you had a good think about it. I have the opinion that white has an advantage here, but that advantage would not last if he does not make good moves. The most obvious and the first option I think is f5 that should be considered. After bishop into e3, queen into e3. If black played bishop f5, then I think after g4 white is winning the game. But he takes gf5, and in the game I tried to think hard. I tried a lot to make this work, because the black king looked a little exposed, but somehow the point is I moved my pawn to f5. I gave up a very important square on e5 for the c6 knight, and after the knight would occupy a square on e5, I think black will have a good position in this situation. So f5 doesn't work. So my next question to you is, what would you do? Moves like bishop f3 are normal. Yes, they are good. But the move I played, I am pretty proud of myself, and it's nothing special, it's nothing spectacular. It's the simple move knight to d4. Now you might ask me, what's so special about it? Well, the special thing here is that this knight on b3 is a pretty stupid piece. It has no scope to go to c5 or to a5, and hence I think it's pretty logical that if you can exchange it with knight d4. And I will tell you a simple rule, that if you can exchange the worst piece in your position, or you can improve its position, you are improving your entire position. Okay, so in this position after knight d4, I think I improved my position as white. Black made not such a good move. He played knight d4. The drawback to this move is that now my bishop gets on a very strong diagonal. He should have preferred maybe bishop d7, and I think he will have a pretty decent position, but of course white will keep the initiative. As things stood, he took the knight on d4, bishop d4, and here he played rook c8. I attacked with queen e3, and here he played his knight back to c5. Okay, I went queen g3. My now new idea is to push f5, and hence he stopped it with bishop f5. I played queen h4. Now I was expecting him to return his bishop back to f8 to defend the e7 pawn, but he surprised me a little with this interesting move knight e6. Okay, if I take on h6, he will have decent chances with knight d4. So I decided to maintain my bishop on the diagonal with bishop c3, and after bishop f8 I would have continued normally, but okay, he first played queen a7 check. I went king h1, and now he played bishop f8. I decided to exchange the queens here with queen f2, Of course a queen exchange would favor me as I am ahead on material, and I have a feeling that he should have played a move like b6 here, but he played this stupid move knight c5. I think it's a very bad move, because after knight c5 I had a very obvious move, and that was queen d4, threatening mate, and he has to radically weaken his king side with f6. Once I get a weakness on the king side, it's almost pretty easy to convert my material advantage. I went bishop f3, he played queen a6, and here I played bd5 check. He went king h8, and I put my rook on e1. Black is totally lost. White has coordinated his pieces excellently. They stand perfectly. But now my opponent played his knight to d3. Oops, sorry. And it's now your turn to play as white. And what would you play? Yes, of course, I'm sure that any person who has trained himself in a few tactics would have found the move rook into e7. It's a pretty simple move. Bishop into e7, queen f6, and I would like to thank my opponent for allowing me to checkmate him with a rook and queen sacrifice, and after bishop into f6 I had a very nice mate on his king. So I won this game. This game was not especially interesting from the competitive point of view, as my opponent didn't play so strong chess, but what I liked is this position after the move a5 that happened in the game, and the accurate calculations which followed after knight b6, which could go on for another 5 to 6 moves, and that's what I really liked. And also another very important point in the game which you can always remember is, if you are not able to find a plan, you must improve your worst placed piece, and my worst placed piece here was knight b3, and I played knight d4, a good move. So I hope you enjoyed the game, and I will come back with more videos in the future, and hopefully we can have good lectures together.